Good. All right. Welcome to the Yerba Power Podcast, where we share the power of Yerba Mate with the world. I have a very special guest today, someone that even I am super honored that didn't think this would happen. I just basically took a shot in the dark, sent him a message, just, slid into his DMs, right? And just said, "Hey, you want to be on the podcast?" And he agreed, which I still don't know why. But what I am so excited to share is his story about Yerba Mate, which you'll hear about later. But first, let me introduce David Bailis. He is a guitarist, musician. He's a vegan athlete with a sub 3 hour marathon, which is something I aspire to do. As you guys know, that I've shared a little bit of my running journey on here, and just know that that's very fast. And he's not done it just once; he's done it several times. Qualified for Boston, which you have to do that fast to be able to qualify for Boston Marathon, which you just completed, and a host of his own podcast called Tourganic, where basically talks about all those kind of things. So, David, thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, dude, so I really am like honestly I mean that like was surprised that you agreed to be on here, and I'm also so ecstatic to share your story, which we'll get into. But first, I guess I would want to share this with the listeners, but I'll be honest, it's kind of some of my own questions that I'm curious about how Boston 2024 went for you. We knew it was hot and sunny. I heard that from a lot of people, and you experienced it yourself. So I don't know, give us, I guess, a recap and how you handled that.
Yeah, this was my fourth straight Boston. So I'm getting more familiar with the course and the experience of Boston, which is I've done New York a bunch of times as well, but Boston is its own unique experience. So let me just first say the things I just love about Boston is if there's an incredible energy in the city and amongst the runners, the camaraderie amongst all the runners. There's so many people that have worked so hard to get there, and it really shows in the attitude of everybody who's just so excited to run Boston. It's so iconic. It's the world's oldest marathon, besides the original. And yeah, it's a really great vibe. But I have found it a challenging course for me. Um, the back half of it is tough, all the hills. So I've chipped away and gotten better each year. And then this past year, y- I live in New York City, so we're training all winter, which is I like running in the cold weather. Give me cold weather, I'm good with it. So, training and I run at 5:30 in the morning, 6 in the morning, so it's dark and cold when I run all winter. And my body was completely not ready. We really haven't had any hot days before Boston. And then I started to see the weather forecast looming, and I was thinking, oh no. Um, it's getting warmer and warmer on the forecast. And by the time we started, yeah, it was in the 60s and just blasting sun. And because it's a spring marathon, there's no trees, there's no shade, there's no big buildings like New York. There's really just no hiding from just the blasting sun. And as I said in my Instagram post about it, like my friends in California or, in hot places are 65. That doesn't sound that bad. 70 at the finish sounds beautiful. But for those of us who trained all winter, it was a shock to the system. So I went out pretty hard. I was right on my marathon pace through mile 15, I think, mile 14 or 15, and I was, cranking away. And then I just felt that switch turn off, and I was getting dehydrated. I was trying to fuel on the course, of course, but I couldn't hold on. And, I powered through and I was happy with my time, somewhat happy that I powered through and finished. Uh, but it was a really tough experience. It was one of my toughest marathons ever. I felt super dehydrated afterwards. I felt really fatigued. And so I've really had to kind of think long and hard about what happened, what potentially went wrong. It has given me a little bit of, what's the word? It's helped me work through as I've seen so many of my other friends that also went through it the same day. Kind of in the moment when you're in the marathon and you're struggling, you think, I'm the only one struggling here. Everyone else is crushing it. And I'm having this
Exactly.
this tough moment, this tough day. What's happening? What's wrong with me? But then afterwards, I don't know if you're on Strava, but on Strava and Instagram and stuff. Oh, all my friends are having a super tough day. A lot of people struggled out there, and that can bring a little solace. But I'm also trying to look back and see what I could have done better because that's kind of how my MO. I'm always just trying to improve and figure out what I can do uh to next time attack it and not be so in such a tough place at the finish line. And my goal is always to have at least an even split between the two halves of the marathon, and that was far from the case on this one. But live and learn. Boston is, it's a tough one. It can be a brutal course, and it's not supposed to be easy.
Yeah, if it were easy, everyone would be there, right? So exactly. So kudos, no, seriously, to you for even getting there for the like you guys that don't know, like it really is like people literally will give up years of their lives to even just qualify to get there. And I was training to qualify, but realized it's way tougher than even I thought. Like I still was, I'm still like 35 minutes short of qualifying, so and I trained hard, but realized, man, my athletic ability is not anywhere close to that just yet.
What do your
But
training weeks
hey,
look like?
progress.
Like in a marathon training cycle? What kind of volume are you doing?
Well, that's the thing is, to be honest, and between you and I, and maybe no one else here knows, but yeah, this has been the first time I've truly trained.
Okay.
Before I just kind of, winged it and just, you follow some online guide, and this was the first time I really kind of got coached and putting basically doing my speed work of, minimal mileage on Monday, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays were kind of a 30-minute kind of either weights or easy run, and then Wednesday would be the medium distance, and then Friday tempo, and Saturday long run, which I had to mix some of those because I have two young kids, so those don't always pan out 100% the way you want them to, and sometimes you can't get in 20 miles or 15. You have to settle with 18 or 12 or whatever you can get in for the day.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'll be honest, like, is putting much volume and stuff there. There's still room for improvement, right? And there always will be. Um,
Yeah.
but I guess my curious thing is, so this is one thing I learned is just I sweat a lot. And I wasn't even aware of this until I did like a sweat test and realizing how much electrolytes I need and water and everything like per hour, realizing I basically sweat out a whole bottle of water an hour and like probably 780 grams of you know electrolytes or salt basically, so I was having to take these salt stick pills like every 30 minutes and sometimes even the
Sure.
chews just to stay up, and so I'm just curious if you know I don't know, as far as especially as a vegan athlete, I'm just kind of curious what how you go about that differently as far as nutrition wise. And I know you had Corey on there to talk about some
Yeah.
of that stuff, but I was just curious if you do anything different.
Yeah, I think nutrition for people that don't maybe haven't done as much running or new to running marathons, nutrition is something that can be easily underestimated how important it is. And I mean, on the course, nutrition while you're running. Of course, I think a lot of people
Yeah,
have an understanding of,
100%. I
you
I
know,
had no clue what I was doing beforehand. And yes, to the exact.
yeah, yeah. And for me, it's been my final frontier of trying to figure it out, and I'm constantly tweaking it. I don't like to necessarily eat and take in food while I'm running. So it's been sort of a battle where I've had to figure it out. So I like I don't like gels. Typically, I don't eat a lot of processed foods at all in my life. So it feels strange when I'm out there working out to be eating these highly processed, weird, super sugary gels. I can't do it. My stomach, it's just like, nah. So what I do is I have these maple syrup packets. I don't know if you've ever heard of those. The brand is called
The untapped.
Untapped. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so I have that Untapped. I think it's called salted cacao is the one that I use. And so that's got electrolytes in it too, and maybe I want to say 25 grams of carbs in a packet. And that's really easy to take down
Hmm.
versus a gel or a chew. So I'll have one of those, and then I do use um I have an all natural gel that I use too. Spring Energy.
Spring. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah,
Yeah, the
I
Spring
figured.
Energy. those are like 45 grams of carbs in one of those. So it
Mhm.
really packs a punch. And the ingredients are all
Yeah.
fairly natural. It's all
What
ingredients you can
what's your
understand.
go-to flavor?
I think it's called applesauce. It's the green one.
Yep, the awesome sauce, I think it's what it's called.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
the apple one. Yep. It tastes, for you guys that don't know, if you're curious about running, so it's like a natural, it's almost like baby food. Like
yeah,
the way it's like it's made and the way you like it's a squishy, paste almost that you eat for the carbs
yeah,
and the energy. And it tastes like a mashed up apple pie or something.
yeah,
Literally just, yeah, it's very much just like it's.
yeah. And then I will have some of the electrolyte tablets that I'll take throughout the race. And yes, like you said, around every half an hour, trying to remind myself to continue. And but it's tough, man. It's tough. My body, as you get going in a marathon, you don't really want to eat. You kind of have to force yourself to. Typically, by the time you realize that you should have eaten and you haven't, it's too late.
Exactly. I've heard it called like the Wile E. Coyote syndrome. It's like, where Wile E. Coyote's running, chasing the roadrunner, and all of a sudden he looks up and then there's a cliff below him with the help sign and then drops down
Yeah.
the cliff. That's it. There's no forgiveness there.
And you can
Um,
survive. You can survive, with minimal nutrition if everything is going right. The weather is perfect. It's an easy course. Maybe
yeah,
you can survive. But the second that adverse, type difficulties start coming up, that's
yeah,
when you're going to pay the price for not fueling properly. Whether it's hills,
yeah.
whether it's heat, whether it's wind, who knows all the potential things that can come up in a race
You
that
can only
is really
control
going to
what you can
affect you.
control. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a
Exactly.
life lesson we're all learning, which is the beautiful thing about it, right?
Yeah, it never
Well,
stops. The learning never stops. Your body never stops changing. You get older. Hopefully, we're getting wiser, but
yeah,
everything's always changing. And the other thing I would say real quick about just preparing for Boston, and if you want to try to get to that sub 3 level, is besides, as I kind of mentioned before, getting your volume up. I'm a real believer in volume. And
noted.
my peak weeks are like getting around 80 miles a week. And my
Yeah.
training cycles are usually like in the 70 range, 70s, and also getting your strength training game together. I
Mm-hmm.
really feel that that's an essential thing. Legs, working your
Mm-hmm.
legs. I have a strength I found on Runners World, I think Runners Magazine, where it's a strength training plan just for your legs for a marathon training cycle. But finding something like that can really lock in 2 days a week at least working legs.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the first time I really took strength training seriously myself too. And I'll admit, just for you and everyone else, yeah, my volume wasn't near that high. I was, 40 to 60, like so, I noted. I'll maybe hit you up later for, more. But electrolytes. So you guys that, just to put this in simple terms of like your body, sweats out electrolytes. It helps with your hydration. It's basically just a compound of different, sodium, magnesium, zinc, right? And
Mhm.
I think I'm missing one, but it's just a compound of different things that are even in salt. Um, and so actually yerba mate has some electrolytes in it, minimal, but it has some. So one thing that I've been, as my way of kind of converting people from coffee to yerba mate is because you can still get the caffeine, and you get electrolytes, so you don't get as dehydrated, especially as a runner. And if you drink beforehand or even afterhand, versus it's a diuretic, so I mean you're still gonna pee a lot, but it's not the same like dehydration of sucking away from your kidneys and everything that coffee does. And no offense to coffee because I drink it too, but just that's my kind of point that I like to hammer on, I guess you could say. But with that transition, I want to hear about your yerba mate story because you have a great one that people need to hear. So I'll let you
Yeah.
retell a little briefly what you told me before.
Y- Yeah, one of the great things about being a professional musician is I get to tour around the world and I've gotten to see so many amazing places. And when I go places, I try to mix it up and check out their culture. And one thing in South America and Chile that you can find is the serious mate drinkers. And what I discovered about the mate experience there is was when I had the mate, we would sit around in a big circle and we would pass around the bombilla, or I think that's the proper name. And we would pass it around, and it was ritualistic. It was a ceremony. It was really cool. And I connected with that versus it just being a beverage. Oh, you walk into Starbucks and you get your coffee. This was a completely different thing. This is a way that people connect and they sit down together and communities connect and families. And I really loved it. And even though the taste for me was really bitter, I tried to just groove with the whole thing and be a part of it just to kind of be a, you know, find the experience that they've been doing for many generations down there, which is deep.
And so this is what I've connected that I think you can relate to as well, and something to share that impactfulness of what we kind of talked about, how you can drink yerba mate by yourself or through a can or however you choose, no judgment here, but it adds a whole nother level of experience, just like running in community. Would you, how do you feel about that as far as, those kind of things as, human nature, but how is that experience different for you in your own words, or what it was, if you can think back how it felt?
Yeah, that's a cool comparison. I do think that community is so important in whatever you're into, and when you find a community and ways that we connect with other people, whether it be running or sharing a tea, mate, anything, it makes it more special and brings out the ritualistic aspect that, is so important for human beings connecting, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's that other thing you said, even with the Boston, of feeling like you're all alone. You're the only one suffering, you know? And then you go through it like, dude, there's like thousands of people, even if they're going 2 hours faster than you or 2 hours slower than you, we're all suffering right now. It's a suck fest for all of us. It's just that I'm suffering for 2 hours less than you are. That's it. You know what I mean? Even if the elites they're suffering for the full 2 hours. It's just they're done in 2 hours versus the rest of us that are 3 or 4, you know? So
Right.
and the same thing with like life. Like the one thing that I really enjoy about the Yerba Mate circle, and I picked this up from my wife because it wasn't part of my culture, right? I'm American, so if you guys didn't know, I'm full American, born here. But the the fact of you're just drinking mate, that's not the thing. It's the fact of it connects you in the conversation in the community. Like what's going on in people's lives. You get a chance to share. It's just like a campfire. Is the best way to describe. It's like something just to gather around. It's something to do, but without being, I guess, distracted too. Of other things going on. It's like it's just tea. There's not much, to like, I guess, think about or whatever. And in the sense of like, with your phones, I guess what I'm trying to get at. With people sitting around on their phones and stuff. So, and it really gets you a chance to, I guess there's something about it. I think the mental clarity and stuff with drinking yerba mate versus like drinking alcohol or something is like it brings out I guess a better side in you than versus this other part of your brain. And so, anyways, that's my I don't know soapbox, I guess.
No, it's true, man. Just as we're becoming increasingly disconnected as humans in this world through technology, and people are just all in their homes and their corners and their offices and even working from home more and more. People are
Mhm.
just more disconnected, and having something that's a you can do together, whether it be running or the yerba mate, where people sit down, they connect, they talk, you slow down for a minute. You have a moment to just sort of take it all in and connect with other people is, I think, a really valuable thing as these moments are fleeting in this world as we move so fast and
Mm.
technology and everything.
So I live in Nashville, and you live in New York City, which Nashville's growing pretty big and pretty crazy too, but New York City is obviously a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long you've been living there, but I know that there's this Humans of New York where it kind of highlights kind of humanity of like seeing people essentially of who they are and where they're at, versus just a passing, ship in the night or just a ghost of a person. That do you feel that New York City, especially after the last couple of years and everything, that is it still a really busy city, or do you feel like there's more connection? I'm just curious as you as someone that's living there, or you're probably more intentional than other people too. But
I don't know if I would say there's a more connection because of COVID or what anything that's happened because of last year, but I would say that in New York is completely happening. It is buzzing, it's packed, people are fully, I've heard other cities that maybe haven't been able to come back. I don't think that is the case at all here. I think New York is totally totally buzzing and people everywhere, and I think there is just like a vibe in New York of people where everybody's just doing their own thing and we're all kind of crisscrossing in this crazy way through the city, and everybody's off on their own agenda, but yet I think there is a recognition that we're all New Yorkers, and there's a general level of respect. Hopefully you show respect to other people, and then you'll feel that respect back.
yeah, that's I think that's well said. Um, well, David, I want to just give you a chance to talk about your podcast and anything else you want the people to know. I do know it's on Apple, which you guys are listening anywhere on Apple. Is can they find it anywhere else?
Yeah, Spotify. I believe it's available anywhere where you listen to podcasts. It should be. I use this app called Pocket Casts. That's how I listen to
Okay.
podcasts.
Okay.
And so
Yep.
I know it's available there. But yeah, I think all the places one might try to find a podcast, the podcast is available. And the podcast talks with athletes, musicians, a lot of in the vegan uh health world, people that I find that have something to share and teach me about training, whether they're amazing athletes or incredible musicians, and talking about a lot of it, especially at first, was talking with musicians about how they travel and try to
Hmm.
stay healthy, because that is a really tricky thing, touring, months on end and trying to stay a healthy
Mm.
person, whether you're vegan, whatever you eat, it's a tricky
Yeah.
thing. And I also do triathlon. I used to do a lot more triathlon,
Oh
and
wow.
so I would be touring and training for triathlon at the same time, trying to find pools. I'd go to YMCA, whatever city I was in,
Yeah.
waking up early, doing whatever I could, and talking about ways that people try to stay healthy on the road. But it's really a podcast just talking to all kinds of interesting people, and please, yeah, come check it out. And then also you can find my music under my name, David Bailis, at Spotify. So please come listen as well.
I'll put all that in the show notes for you guys. Easy to find. Tourganic Podcast, and then
Yeah, and
David
on
Bayless. I'll
Instagram,
put it
of
down there for you
course.
guys. Yeah, and I'll definitely tag you and the link you into this as well. Um, but I really want to honor you for you taking your time and just being willing to share because I know you got a lot of things going on, especially if you're touring and doing triathlons. I didn't know you were that hardcore, but I mean, I know all the time and hours that goes into that people don't see behind. Even the fact of just practicing, for the next set you got. Like there's so many hours that people don't see behind the scenes.
Yeah.
David, anything else you want to share with the guests before we go?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for reaching out. Thanks for having me. I love connecting with people and talking and sharing my experiences and learning from other people. So yeah, blessed. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, brother. I'll connect with you in a message here in a second. I've actually got some guests for you that, if you're interested, that might get a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that lives in Brazil that's vegan. I don't know
Oh,
if that's
cool.
piques your
Yeah.
interest or not, but I can pass you his contact. And but yeah, David, honor and a pleasure to have you on. Be well. See you next time.
Beautiful. Thanks for having me, man.